At the time of recording, Lewis Hamilton is still completely radio silent after the Abu Dhabi 2021 finale, a result that ultimately he's got all the right to feel begrudged about. If the regulations were followed by the book, the race would have either finished under safety car and he won, or there'd have been lap cars between the two of them, and Max might not have passed him. Maybe he would have. You can't say for sure, but you cannot blame Lewis for being fuming. And if it was Max on the receiving end, Max fans, don't pretend you wouldn't feel the same. And because of this, there's a bunch of rumours flying around suggesting that Lewis might not take part in the 2022 Formula 1 season. Do you mind? Personally, I think that's nonsense. Like, he's not obliged to tweet, he's not obliged to post on social media, he's not obliged to say anything publicly, and I don't blame him for not wanting to. But this whole situation has got me reflecting on what the future holds for Lewis Hamilton in Formula 1. He's 37 years old now. He's not got forever left in the sport. I can't see him competing unless he's got a title-winning car. You just don't know where Mercedes are going to be in 2022. You assume they're going to be up there, but it's not guaranteed. And then last time I got a haircut, which has been a while because it's starting to grow out of the sides, my barber came up with this quality video idea. What if Lewis just started his own team? Bins off the racing, builds his own team from scratch. What could that look like? Obviously, this fits perfectly in my what if blank joined F1 series, but instead of a brand joining this time, it's a driver setting up his very own team. Big up Rogers Barbershop in Chancery Lane. I don't see him racing into his 40s like Kimi, like Fernando did. I see him getting out and endeavouring in other projects, and we know Lewis has got a lot on his plate. He's got a lot of things that he gets involved in. Maybe his own F1 team could be one of those things. He's already got his Extreme E team, X44. He's an entrepreneur. He's got his fingers in multiple pies, loads of different businesses that he's invested in. It's clear that he wants to promote positive change in motorsport through the Hamilton Commission. The work he's doing, super important. And look, ultimately, when he comes to retire, his voice isn't going to be as powerful when he's out the sport than it is when he's in it. So having his own team is another way that he can ensure that he can continue to put pressure for positive change within not just F1, but motorsport in general. If he keeps that Hamilton name in Formula 1, like Bruce McLaren did. Bruce was never a top tier driver. He was a fantastic driver, don't get me wrong. Never won a world driver's title, but look at his legacy. That has long outlived him and many generations. Lewis could do the same. Yes, Lewis has deep pockets, but he wouldn't need them because he'd have sponsors clambering left, right and centre to get onto that car. For me, this is super feasible, especially during the cost cap era. Look at Haas. They joined the sport in 2016. First season, finished 8th in the Constructors. Not great, but they finished ahead of Renault, and we want to see more teams in Formula 1. I don't think 10's enough. We've got so many drivers out there. Do you mind? Young drivers who deserve opportunities who maybe haven't got them, like adding a brand new team to the grid is going to expand that from 20 to 22. It makes a lot of sense. Statistically, the greatest of all time, a character that's transcended the mainstream, over 26 million followers on Instagram. Like him or not, Lewis Hamilton is a big deal. And having his own team would cement his legacy even more so for generations to come. So today we're going to imagine if Lewis started his own F1 team. I'm talking as if he started it at the end of this 2022 season for 2023, driver lineup, engine, stuff like headquarters, all that good stuff. We'll cover over all the basics to bring to life what a Lewis Hamilton Formula 1 team in 2023 might look like. But before we crack on, look, I'm sorry, Minton, I can't keep you on my shoulder. This really hurt. I'm having to arch my back to keep him on, to keep him balanced. Look how much his bum sticks out over the back. He's choosing voluntarily to be there. I don't know how this is comfortable, mate. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to put you down. So let's start with the team principal. Who's the individual who's going to be put in charge to take that lead responsibility to turn this F1 team that's coming from nothing to something that merits the caliber of the name it will be racing under? Now, look, we all know Lewis Hamilton's relationship with Toto Wolff is a very, very strong one since they both joined the team in 2013. It appears to be one of the strongest kind of team principal driver relationships on the grid, I'd say so, definitely from the outside looking in. Question is, would Toto leave Mercedes to follow Lewis? Because he isn't only a team principal, but he is a pretty significant shareholder in the Mercedes AMG Petronas Formula 1 team. Previously on the board of directors at Williams. But look, by the 2023 season starting, they would have both had 10 full seasons at Mercedes, and they achieved pretty much everything you could have possibly asked from them. Lewis and Toto spearheaded one of the most, if not the most dominant period in Formula 1 history. Like, what more is there to achieve at Mercedes? Surely the idea of moving away, starting something new from scratch, a brand new project, something that they could call their own, I think that would be an incredibly exciting and enticing prospect. Toto isn't just a team principal. He is a very, very successful businessman. And I think he would recognize and identify the opportunity here to jump into this project with Lewis, probably have some kind of shareholder director role in there as well. This opportunity, I think, would be too much for Toto to turn down. I think he'd be straight on it. I think he would be team principal. Then onto the engine. Look, obviously, they wouldn't develop their own. That would be foolish. They would be a customer team to start with. You never know long term, but at least to start with. Obviously, what makes the most sense is to go down the Mercedes route. And, Lewis has had that connection with Mercedes since, he was picked up by McLaren Mercedes at 13 years of age. Toto, even when he was at Williams, that was a Mercedes-powered Williams team. The problem is, obviously, the nature of the breakup. Would Lewis and Toto be leaving and taking loads of Mercedes staff with them? Would Bono come with? Would James Allison come with? Would Toto go on the hunt trying to find staff that he thinks would be interested in the project? And would that put Mercedes out a bit? I mean, you'd anticipate it would. They wouldn't be too happy about it. Mercedes would have to balance up that aspect with the value of being aligned with this new project, because an engine supplier can be as iconic as the name of the team itself. Again, think McLaren Mercedes, think Red Bull Renault, think McLaren Honda from back in the day. As much as Mercedes would be losing, huge assets to them by aligning with this new Lewis Hamilton F1 team, they could put their name front and centre, and that would outweigh the short-term losses from a marketing point of view, if you ask me. So boring answer, I'm going Mercedes power plant in the Lewis Hamilton Formula 1 team car. Now we need to decide what we're actually going to call this Formula 1 team, because Lewis Hamilton's Formula 1 team doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, right? So I asked my YouTube community members. So again, if you want to join, click down below, £2 a month gang, friends of Tommo. I asked you lot for suggestions for what a Lewis Hamilton's own team would be called potentially, and we had plenty of suggestions. H44, F44, My Tyres Are Gone Racing, Team LH, Roscoe Racing, all honourable mentions. But ultimately, I want to try and make this as realistic as I can. And when you look at the other teams, how they present their brands, typically it is pretty simple. And I'm not saying Lewis has to go down that route, but I think it makes the most sense. So Williams, for example, their actual name is Williams Racing. McLaren is McLaren Formula 1 team. Ferrari is Scuderia Ferrari. Alpine is Alpine F1 team. And Lewis Hamilton's F1 team will be Hamilton Racing. That's what I've decided on. I think Hamilton Racing over F1 team, because that F1 trademark in the name, I think it weakens the brand's scope and appeal, because you got to remember, Lewis is super into his clobber. He loves his clothes. The brand of Hamilton Racing, I think it's something that could live beyond and expand beyond just that F1 team. If we're talking about merchandise, if we're talking about karting, if we're talking about junior formulas as well. F1 team kind of pigeonholes it, whereas Hamilton Racing, that could be a properly sick little brand that can not only be an F1 team, but again, can exist beyond those parameters. So the team name is Hamilton Racing. Something I've never thought to elaborate on in these previous videos is, where would this team be based? Especially poignant with teams that aren't taking over other teams but are starting from scratch. Where would they choose to begin? Because a lot of F1 teams, they just inherit the bases of their previous teams, and they're not going to bother going to the expense of building a brand new one from scratch when they've already got a facility there, right? But with Lewis, for Hamilton Racing, you're starting from scratch, clean. Well, 7 of the 10 F1 teams on the grid are not just based in the UK, but are specifically based in Motorsport Valley. Minus McLaren, I suppose, are a bit more south, but yeah, typically it's all around the kind of Midlands area. It's kind of the middle of nowhere. I mean, look where Enstone is. Enstone's like a tiny little village. The fact that these teams exist away from not just London, but most kind of cities, I feel has a negative impact on the diversity of staff that you get working at a place like that. You're not going to get many people prepared to commute all the way from London to Brackley every day. You know what I'm saying? I think to encourage a more diverse, a more open, more kind of youthful and current workforce, it needs to be based closer to a city. I'm saying that city is London. I've picked just slightly north of London, right near to Rye House Karting Circuit, which is pretty much where Lewis Hamilton cut his teeth as a junior, growing up in Stevenage, not that far away. You can get there easy from Tottenham Hale, jump on the A10, it's like a 45-minute drive to central London. Again, close to Lewis's spiritual home, near one of the biggest karting circuits in the country. I think it kind of ticks all the boxes because obviously once you get inside of London, rent is like sky high. You could find an area to build a really cool factory, maybe start an industrial estate and then expand from there. So I'm saying Hamilton Racing will be based around Broxbourne Way, kind of near Rye House Karting Circuit. Now onto the drivers. First one, super easy. Second one, less so. Okay, so Lewis typically keeps to himself in the paddock, which is fine. He's entitled to do what he likes. But there is one driver that he does seem to get on particularly well with via the means of Call of Duty, by the sounds of it. But also, this is a driver who is showing incredible potential, but his future is insecure. I've already given him a seat on this What If series before a couple of times, I think. And once again, it is Pierre Gasly, because Pierre Gasly would make so much sense. There isn't any like top established team right now that Pierre could go to and lead the way beyond AlphaTauri. But we know he doesn't see his future there. He would love the Red Bull seat, that Red Bull opportunity, whether it's going to happen or not with Sergio. If Sergio Perez has a really good 2022. This new project, look, again, he's got a great relationship with Lewis Hamilton. I think Pierre is super switched on. He would sense the opportunity. Yes, he'd be going to a brand new team from scratch. There's a lot of unknowns, but he would come into that team as the lead driver to build around. He's got so much experience. You know, most learning comes from adversity. He had a very adverse period at Red Bull, but he's kicked on super well since he went back to Toro Rosso AlphaTauri. I think he'd be the perfect driver to lead the line at Hamilton Racing. And then alongside him, I'm bringing in another driver with experience. I'm not bringing a super young driver in because they're a small team. You've got to remember, small team is going to benefit from having drivers with experience. So I'm going for a driver who's kind of got a link to Lewis, you know, ex-Mercedes link there. He's 27 years of age. Was the driver who would have inherited Nico Rosberg's seat at Mercedes if it wasn't for Valtteri Bottas's incredible 15 and 16 seasons at Williams. And that driver is current Formula E driver Pascal Wehrlein, who's done a pretty solid job since he went to Formula E. In Formula 1, again, like he raced at Manor, he raced at Sauber, 2 seasons, beat his teammates on both occasions. Definitely didn't deserve to lose a seat in F1 entirely, but that's the way the cookie crumbles in F1. And, you know, he's been racing ever since. He's still only 27, so he's not old. He's only 2 years older than Pierre. I think he would come in, him and Pierre would be a quality little starting partnership to really build momentum and let that team grow and expand to the potential that we all know it could be. And then for test and reserve driver, again, look, Lewis has got an opportunity here to give a young kid a chance. Looking through the F2 and F3 fields, there's a lot that you can make an argument for. For me, I'm going to say he goes with Felipe Drugovich as the test reserve driver. He's raced 2 seasons in Formula 2, done a pretty solid job both years, has won 3 races, 2 P2s, 3 P3s, 4 P4s over his 2 seasons in the sport. He hasn't done a bad job at all. He's been pretty unlucky at times. I really like Felipe, and he's Brazilian. Maybe this is a silly reason to put him in, but look, Lewis has got such a connection with Brazil. He's always, even though he kind of took that championship away from Felipe in 2008, he's always been well received. We all know how much he idolised Senna. And I think promoting a young Brazilian talent, we haven't seen a Brazilian F1 since Felipe Massa in 2017. And I think Felipe has got the minerals to do a really good, solid job. And I think giving him a test reserve role would be a good way of introducing him to Formula 1 and seeing if he does have the minerals to make it or not. So my Hamilton Racing drivers will be Pierre Gasly, Pascal Wehrlein, and test reserve Felipe Drugovich. Graphic stuff. Let's have a look at my interpretation of what the Hamilton Racing driver overalls will look like, and by no surprise, they're very purple. Lewis loves purple. This is his colour. He's made it his own. He used to run the Senna helmet, the yellow back in the day. He's been running the purple for a good few years now. He's embraced the purple as his brand colour. It's a no-brainer to go with purple. We've got 3 shades going on. We've got the dark purple base. We've got then the lighter purple and then the even lighter purple little hits there. And sponsors, again, like I said before, there would be plenty of sponsors trying themselves, tripping over themselves to get on this car. And the sponsors I've got here are only the ones that Lewis already has a relationship with. Lewis is already an ambassador for Monster Energy, Tommy Hilfiger, Puma, Bell, IWC, Bose, MV Agusta, LG, and Police. They're brands that already love Lewis and have Lewis as part of their marketing activity, right? But then you've got Neat Burger, vegan burger chain, fashion magazine WMag, plant-based food startup Notco, and vertical farming startup Bowery Farming. These are all businesses that he has personally invested his own money in. He's on the board of directors at these companies. So it's a no-brainer that he's going to put these logos on. I actually just realised that I just missed WMAG on the overalls and the car. Sorry, WMAG, but all the other ones are on it. But yeah, Monster have supported Lewis for time, so they've got big presence on here. Again, Bose as well. Like, they've left Mercedes, but they've still got a personal relationship with Lewis. Tommy is one of those brands that, you know, Lewis brought them to Mercedes, not vice versa, so they'd follow him. All the other brands feature on there. And again, I'm putting the Hamilton Commission on there because that is something much bigger than him that he's working towards. He'd want to use this platform to promote it. But yeah, I actually designed these at first black, and then I was like, these just look too Mercedes. But actually, with the purple, little hits of green for Monster Energy, I'm happy with these. And last but by no means least, the livery designed by myself using the Race Sim Studio 2022 F1 car model, renders and animations by F1 Addict. Here she is. Look, I haven't designed a livery for a while, okay, so forgive me if this isn't amazing. I'll probably look back at this and think it's a bit rubbish, but right now I'm looking at it, I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. And again, thank you so much to F1 Addict for doing the renders on these. They make incredible content, especially on Instagram. Livery, helmet concepts, so good, well worth a follow, I promise you that. But yeah, on the side, we've got kind of Bose, and you saw that on the driver overalls as well. Bose is kind of the main sponsor I'm carrying here in terms of the biggest presence. But you got kind of LG, you got Puma, you got Neatburger, Hamilton Commission, IWC Monster, Tommy, all on the side, Buttery back here as well. Move around to the top, and I've kept Lewis's kind of standard logo for the edge of the nose. Again, Bose, we've got a few more brands on the nose, Notco, Police in there as well. Number 10. For Pierre Gasly, this would be Pierre's car, and then on the rear wing I've got the kind of Hamilton Racing. But yeah, I really like the way the green kind of contrasts with the purple, so that's why I've lent quite heavily into Monster and put that on the front wing and on these kind of side portions as well. You got a bit of green on the Bowery logo as well. Because what I usually do with these liveries is I start with the design and then add the logos, but in this instance I started with the logos, then added the kind of design to it. And actually I think that's a better way of doing it, because ultimately the priority is the brands get the exposure that they want, so you have to prioritize the brands being in good places where they get good exposure, and then kind of build the design around it. I'm pretty sure that's how most livery designers go about designing the real thing. But there we have it. That is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Did you think this was banging or a dud? Links to Race Sim Studio and to F1 Addict down below if you want to design. If you want to design your own ones, you can. Will Lewis Hamilton start his own F1 team? Let me know in the comments down below. My name's been Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.